I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of my apartment window and watched the city lights shimmer across downtown Seattle. 30 years old, and I had just signed the closing papers on my first house. A real house, with a backyard, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a mortgage that belonged entirely to me. The keys sat heavy in my jacket pocket, their serrated edges digging into my thigh as a constant reminder that I had actually done it. My phone buzzed against the windowsill. I glanced down, expecting congratulations from my colleague Margaret, who had been following my house hunting journey for 8 months. Instead, my mother's name illuminated the screen. I hesitated before answering, my finger hovering over the green button. Our conversations had become increasingly strained over the past 18 months, ever since my younger brother Dylan dropped out of culinary school for the 4th time. "Hello, Maya." Her voice carried that sharp, clipped tone she reserved for delivering ultimatums. "Your father and I need to speak with you. Can you come by the house tomorrow evening?" I shifted my weight, still staring out at the glittering Seattle skyline, watching the Space Needle's lights pulse against the darkening sky. "I'm actually pretty busy tomorrow, Mom. I'm moving into my new place this weekend, remember? I told you about it 6 weeks ago when I got the pre-approval letter." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Then, "So you actually went through with that purchase? Maya, we discussed this extensively. You should have waited another year or 2. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. We had not discussed anything. She had expressed her opinion, loudly and repeatedly, which was that I should continue renting my cramped studio apartment and help Dylan pay for yet another attempt at finding himself, this time at a private art institute in Portland that cost $45,000 per year. I had smiled politely, nodded noncommittally, and proceeded with my own carefully laid plans, exactly as I had been doing since I was 16 years old, and realized that my parents' financial priorities would never align with my own needs. "I've been saving for this for 7 years. Mom, I had a 20% down payment. The timing was perfect. Interest rates were favorable, and the market in this neighborhood is only going to appreciate. Your brother needs support right now, Maya. He's going through a significant transition period. He's finally found something he's passionate about, graphic design, and he needs family backing to make it work." Dylan was always going through a significant transition period. At 26, he had cycled through 6 different career aspirations: chef, personal trainer, real estate agent, podcast host, social media consultant, and now graphic designer. He had racked up substantial credit card debt, somewhere north of $30,000 according to the last family dinner conversation I had reluctantly attended. He had moved back into our parents' house 3 separate times, each stay lasting longer than the previous one. Each time Dylan stumbled, our parents had swooped in to bail him out, smoothed over his mistakes with generous checks, and assured him that he just needed to find his true calling. They paid off his credit cards. They covered his car payments when he quit jobs impulsively. They funded his various educational pursuits and business ventures that inevitably collapsed within months. Meanwhile, I had worked 2 jobs simultaneously throughout my junior and senior years of high school. I put myself through the University of Washington while working full-time at a medical equipment distribution center, taking a full course load and somehow managing to graduate in 4 years with a degree in supply chain management. I had climbed my way from warehouse associate to inventory specialist to my current position as senior logistics coordinator, a role that finally paid me $78,000 annually, enough to save aggressively while still maintaining a modest lifestyle. I had eaten instant ramen and canned soup for dinner more nights than I could count. I had skipped spring break trips that my college classmates took to Cancun and Miami. I had driven a 15-year-old Honda Civic that required constant repairs and left me stranded on the side of Interstate 5 twice. I had watched my savings account grow with a devotion that my friends found puzzling and my family found incomprehensible. Mom, I really need to go. I have to finalize things with the moving company. I'll call you next week sometime. I ended the call before she could launch into another monologue about family responsibility and Dylan's fragile emotional state. Outside my window, a ferry glided across Puget Sound, its lights reflecting off the dark water. I thought about the house waiting for me in the Greenwood neighborhood, about 25 minutes north of downtown. The house I had toured 9 times before making an offer, measuring every room twice, checking the furnace and water heater dates, examining the foundation for cracks, reviewing the disclosure documents with meticulous attention. The inspector had been impressed with my thoroughness. "This place has excellent bones," he had told me, tapping his pen against his clipboard. "The roof was replaced just 3 years ago. Should be good for another 25. The electrical panel was updated to modern code. The plumbing is copper, not that old galvanized steel that causes problems. Someone took care of this property. The neighborhood was quiet and safe, filled with young families, professional couples, and retirees who actually maintained their yards and took pride in their properties. There were coffee shops within walking distance, a farmer's market every Saturday morning, and a highly rated public library 2 blocks away." My phone buzzed again, this time with a text message from Dylan. "Heard you bought a house. Must be nice having everything fall into your lap like that. Some of us actually struggle." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, my reflection ghosting over the words, everything falling into my lap. The casual dismissal of 7 years of sacrifice, of 70-hour work weeks, of choosing a generic brand grocery store over Whole Foods, of repairing my clothes instead of buying new ones, of learning to cut my own hair to save $40 every 6 weeks. Dylan had received a brand new Subaru Outback for his 21st birthday, complete with a bow on the hood and our parents beaming beside it while he posted photos to Instagram. I had bought my used Honda at 22 with money I had saved over 3 years, negotiating with a private seller and doing my own research on Kelley Blue Book values to avoid getting cheated. Dylan had attended the University of Oregon with our parents covering his full tuition, room and board, meal plan, and even a generous monthly allowance for incidentals that he spent on concerts, restaurant meals, and weekend ski trips to Mount Bachelor. I had taken out student loans for my first 2 years at UW, working 35 hours per week at the distribution center while carrying 15 credits per quarter, studying in the break room during my lunch hours and on the bus during my commute. But sure, everything had fallen into my lap. I did not respond to Dylan's text. Instead, I pulled up the photos I had taken of the house on my phone, swiping through them slowly. The living room featured large windows that flooded the space with natural light in the afternoons. The kitchen needed some aesthetic updating. The countertops were laminate from the 90s, and the appliances were builder grade, but everything functioned properly. The master bedroom had a walk-in closet and an ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub. The backyard had a wooden deck where I could put a table and chairs and maybe some potted plants. It was mine. Completely, legally, undeniably mine. The next evening, I began hauling boxes from my studio apartment to the 16-foot moving truck I had rented from U-Haul. Margaret showed up at 6 o'clock with iced coffee and her girlfriend Rachel, both ready to help me load furniture and boxes. "Are your parents coming to help?" Margaret asked, wrapping my dishes carefully in newspaper and packing them into a medium-sized box marked Kitchen Fragile. "Didn't invite them," I said simply, carrying a box of books toward the truck. Margaret gave me one of her knowing looks, the kind that conveyed understanding without requiring detailed explanations. At 47, having navigated 3 divorces and complex relationships with her own adult children, Margaret understood family complications on a fundamental level. She had learned not to pry, not to judge, and not to offer unsolicited advice. We finished loading the truck by 9:30 that night. My apartment looked surreal, stripped of all the furniture and belongings that had made it home for 5 years. Just carpet indentations where my couch had been, nail holes in the walls from picture frames and shelves, and that persistent coffee stain on the kitchen counter that I had never managed to remove completely. I had lived in this 400-square-foot studio apartment, watching my savings account balance climb steadily while other people my age, people who earned similar salaries, took vacations to Europe, bought new cars every few years, and posted photos of expensive restaurant meals to social media. Every financial decision I made had been calculated, deliberate, focused on one singular goal that I had set for myself at age 23: own property before age 31. Margaret drove the moving truck while I followed in my Honda, Rachel riding shotgun with me and providing navigation assistance even though I knew the route perfectly. The house was located in Greenwood, a neighborhood that had undergone significant gentrification over the past decade but still retained some affordability compared to areas like Capitol Hill or Ballard. The streets were lined with mature maple and cherry, trees that would be spectacular in the fall. Most houses featured well-maintained yards, a mix of traditional grass lawns and more modern xeriscaping with native Pacific Northwest plants. Mine was a craftsman-style bungalow painted a soft gray blue with white trim, built in 1978 but renovated thoughtfully by the previous owners who had been an elderly couple downsizing to a retirement community in Arizona. The front porch had space for 2 chairs and some planters. The driveway could fit 2 cars comfortably. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, breathing in the smell of fresh paint and the faint lavender scent from the plug-in air fresheners the previous owners had left behind. The hardwood floors creaked slightly underfoot, not in a concerning way, just in that characteristic manner of a house with history and character. "This place has really good energy," Margaret announced, walking through the empty rooms with her iced coffee in hand. "I can absolutely see you being happy here, Maya. It suits you." We unloaded the truck in stages, taking frequent breaks to drink water and rest our backs. Seattle in August meant warm but not oppressive temperatures, though by midnight, when we finished bringing in the last boxes, we were all exhausted and sweaty. Margaret and Rachel left around 12:45, making me promise to text them when I woke up the next morning so they knew I had survived my first night in the house. Rachel hugged me tightly at the door. "You did it, Maya, you really did it. I'm proud of you." After they left, I stood in the center of my new living room, surrounded by stacked boxes and furniture placed in approximate positions. The house settled around me, making those subtle creaking and shifting sounds that houses make as temperatures drop and materials contract slightly. I had done this without help from my parents, without loans from family members, without taking shortcuts or compromising my principles. I had worked and saved and sacrificed, and now I owned real property with my name on the deed. Maya Catherine Foster, sole owner. My phone rang at 7:15 the next morning, jolting me awake on the air mattress I had inflated in the master bedroom. My mother's name appeared on the screen again. "Maya, we need you to come to the house today. This afternoon. This is extremely important and non-negotiable." I rubbed sleep from my eyes, my neck already stiff from the air mattress. "What's going on, Mom?" "Just come over around 2 o'clock. Your father and I need to discuss something significant with you. And Maya, bring all your paperwork from the house purchase." Something in her tone, a particular sharpness, an edge of barely suppressed anger, made my stomach clench with unease. What paperwork specifically? The deed, the mortgage documents, the title insurance, the closing statement, all of it. Every piece of paper related to that house. Bring everything. She hung up before I could ask any additional questions, leaving me staring at my phone in the morning light filtering through the bedroom blinds I had not yet adjusted properly. I lay on the uncomfortable air mattress for several minutes, staring up at the ceiling fan that slowly rotated above me, trying to decipher what this summons might mean. The house was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, a dog barking somewhere several houses away, and the distant sound of a lawnmower. I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue that afternoon, taking the 520 bridge across Lake Washington. The development where they lived was one of those meticulously planned communities with a homeowners association that regulated everything from mailbox styles to lawn maintenance schedules to approved exterior paint colors. Their house was a 2-story colonial style home with a 4-car garage and a saltwater pool in the backyard. My father had retired at 58 from his career as a pharmaceutical sales regional director, and my mother had worked part-time as a boutique manager, more for social engagement and employee discounts than any real financial necessity. Their combined retirement income and investments meant they lived very comfortably. Dylan's car, the Subaru Outback our parents had gifted him, was parked prominently in the circular driveway. Of course he would be here. I grabbed the folder containing all my house documents from the passenger seat and walked toward the front door, my anxiety increasing with each step. My mother opened the door before I could ring the bell, as though she had been watching for my arrival. "Come in, Maya. We're waiting in the living room." My father sat in his leather recliner, reading glasses perched on his nose as he examined something on his iPad. Dylan sprawled on the sectional sofa, his expression an odd mixture of smugness and vindication that immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. I felt the first real whisper of genuine unease creep up my spine. "Sit down." "Maya?" My mother gestured toward the love seat across from Dylan. I remained standing, clutching my folder of documents. "What is this about?" My father set down his iPad with deliberate slowness. "Your mother and I have been discussing your recent real estate purchase at length, and we feel you made this decision without proper consideration for the family's collective needs and circumstances." "The family's collective needs?" I repeated slowly, carefully. "I bought a house with my money that I saved. How does that involve the family's needs? Money you earned while benefiting from the foundation we provided for 18 years, my mother interjected sharply. "We gave you a stable home, paid for your food and clothing, provided you with opportunities. You owe us consideration in your major life decisions." I looked at Dylan, who was now examining his fingernails with studied disinterest, clearly trying to suppress a smile. The pieces started clicking together in my mind like tumblers in a lock. "What is this really about?" I asked. "Just say it directly." My father cleared his throat in that particular way he did when preparing to deliver news he knew would be received poorly. "Your brother needs stability right now, Maya. He's been searching for affordable housing so he can focus on building his graphic design portfolio and finding clients. Your house would be perfect for him. 4 bedrooms is excessive for one person." The room seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. "You think my house would be perfect for Dylan?" "You bought a 4-bedroom house," my mother said, leaning forward. "That's far too much space for a single person living alone. Dylan could live there and pay you a minimal rent contribution until he gets his business established and generates steady income. It makes financial sense, and it helps family." I actually laughed. A short, sharp bark of sound that made all 3 of them visibly flinch. "You want me to hand over the house I just bought? The house I worked 2 jobs for 7 years to save for? To Dylan?" "Not hand over," my father said quickly. "Share it. Be a family. Support each other the way families are supposed to." "I worked at a coffee shop until my hands had permanent burns from the steam wands," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I worked night shifts at a distribution center, moving boxes until my back ached constantly. I ate 99-cent frozen meals for dinner 4 nights a week for years. And you want me to give my house to Dylan, who has never held a job for more than 8 months in his entire adult life?" Dylan finally looked up from his fingernails, his face flushing red. "See, Dad? This is exactly her problem. She thinks she's superior to everyone else because she's willing to be miserable and joyless. She acts like basic responsibility is some kind of heroic sacrifice." The words hung in the air between us like poisonous gas. I stared at my brother, at the designer sneakers he was wearing that I knew cost $300, at the Apple Watch on his wrist, at the expensive haircut he had clearly gotten within the past week at a salon I could never afford to visit. "Willing to be miserable," I repeated slowly. "Is that what you think hard work and financial discipline are? Just choosing to be miserable? You act like being responsible is some kind of virtue," Dylan said, sitting up straighter now, emboldened. "Meanwhile, you have no life whatsoever. No real friends except that woman from work. No romantic relationship. You just save money obsessively and judge everyone else who doesn't live like a monk." "Boys and girls, that's quite enough," my mother interjected, using her stern parental voice. "Maya, we are not asking you to give Dylan the house. We're asking you to share it. Let him live there for a reasonable period while he establishes his business. Help him get on solid footing. He's your brother. Family helps family. I turned to my mother, feeling 7 years of suppressed resentment crystallizing into clarity. When I needed help with college tuition, you told me to take out student loans. When I needed a car, you told me to save up and buy one myself. When I asked if you could co-sign on an apartment lease because I didn't have enough credit history, you said it would be good for me to build my own credit. But Dylan gets everything handed to him repeatedly, and I'm supposed to just accept that pattern and participate in it? We did what we thought was best for your character development, my father said. You were always fiercely independent, Maya. You didn't need as much support and guidance as your brother. Dylan has always been more sensitive, more creative. Different people need different types of support. I didn't need less support, I said, my voice shaking now. I needed the same support Dylan got. You just didn't want to provide it because it was easier to let me struggle. On my own while pouring resources into Dylan, it's always been easier. The silence that followed felt heavy, with years of unspoken resentment and unacknowledged hurt. I had always been the capable one, the self-sufficient one, the one who figured things out independently. Dylan had always been the one who needed help, guidance, financial bailouts, emotional support, and endless second chances. And somehow, through some twisted logic, I had become the villain for refusing to perpetuate that dysfunctional dynamic. Here's what's going to happen, my mother said, her voice taking on that authoritative tone she had used throughout my childhood when issuing non-negotiable commands. You're going to let Dylan move into your house. He'll pay you $400 monthly, which is extremely generous given the family circumstances and his current financial situation. I stared at her in genuine disbelief. $400 a month? Mom, the mortgage alone is $2,200, plus utilities, homeowner's insurance, property taxes, maintenance costs. We're talking close to $3,000 in monthly expenses. Then you'll cover the rest, she said simply. Consider it an investment in your brother's future and in family harmony. Something shifted deep inside me at that moment. A lifetime of swallowing disappointment, of being told I was selfish for wanting acknowledgement, of watching my brother receive opportunities and support I had been systematically denied, while simultaneously being lectured about family obligations and gratitude, all of it crystallized into a cold, hard certainty. No. My father frowned, leaning forward in his recliner. Maya, be reasonable. Think about what you're saying. I am being completely reasonable. The answer is no. Dylan is not moving into my house. Not for $400 monthly. Not for any amount of money. It's my house. I earned it. He can't have it. My mother's expression hardened into something cold and angry. You're being incredibly selfish after everything we've done for you over 30 years. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, genuinely curious now. Please be specific. List it out. I want to understand what you think you've done that justifies this request. The question seemed to catch her completely off guard. She sputtered for a moment before saying, We raised you. We fed you. We clothed you. We gave you a home and a family. We provided for all your basic needs throughout your childhood. Those are basic parental obligations, I said quietly, not extraordinary sacrifices. What else? This is absolutely ridiculous, Dylan said, standing up abruptly. You know what, Maya? Keep your stupid house. I genuinely hope you're happy living there completely alone. Being bitter about your pathetic existence while the rest of us actually enjoy our lives. He stormed out dramatically, and I heard his car start in the driveway moments later, the engine revving aggressively before he sped away. My parents stared at me with matching expressions of disappointment and suppressed anger. My father shook his head slowly. You're making a serious mistake, Maya. Family is supposed to help each other unconditionally. That's what family means. Family is supposed to celebrate each other's accomplishments, I replied, not tear them down out of jealousy and entitlement, not weaponize guilt and obligation to take what someone else earned. I left before they could formulate a response, walking quickly to my car with hands that trembled slightly. I sat in their circular driveway for a long moment, watching the sun set behind their perfectly maintained house with its perfectly manicured lawn and its perfectly appointed interior that had never known what it genuinely meant to struggle financially. Then, I drove home to my house, my imperfect, needs some cosmetic updates, hard-won, completely and totally mine house. I spent the next week and a half unpacking boxes methodically and arranging furniture. Margaret came over twice to help, and we assembled a bookshelf from IKEA while drinking wine and complaining about the incomprehensible pictogram instructions that seemed designed to frustrate rather than assist. Work continued with its usual rhythm. I coordinated pharmaceutical shipments, managed complex inventory databases, and solved logistical problems for medical supplies that needed to reach hospitals across Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. My manager, a no-nonsense woman named Helen, complimented my efficiency on a particularly complicated shipment to a rural hospital in eastern Oregon. My parents did not call. Dylan did not text. The silence felt like a cold war, an uneasy ceasefire that could shatter at any moment. But I found I did not particularly miss the constant criticism and manipulation that had characterized most family interactions. I woke up each morning in my house, made coffee in my kitchen using the French press I had finally bought after years of using instant coffee, and went to work from my address, my permanent address, not a temporary rental. Then, on a Thursday afternoon 2 weeks after the confrontation, while I was reorganizing the warehouse receiving bay and training a new employee on inventory protocols, I received an email notification from the King County Superior Court system. My heart sank before I even opened the message, a sense of dread settling over me like a heavy blanket. My parents had filed a civil lawsuit against me. I read the legal document 3 times, sitting in my Honda in the warehouse parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. The claim stated that my parents had provided substantial financial support and resources throughout my life with the understanding and implied agreement that I would assist family members in need when I achieved financial stability. They were seeking either partial ownership of the house, specifically, they wanted Dylan's name added to the deed, or financial compensation equivalent to 25 years of child-rearing expenses, investment, and opportunity costs. The lawsuit detailed their purported investment in raising me, including itemized estimates for food, clothing, housing, education, medical care, and even emotional labor and parenting time. They claimed I had entered into an implied contract by accepting their support throughout my childhood and adolescence, and that I now owed restitution in the form of either sharing my property with Dylan or compensating them for their parental investment. It was insane. Absolutely insane. It was also very real, with a court date set for 9 weeks away. I called the only attorney I knew personally, a woman named Jennifer. Jen, who sometimes came into the warehouse to pick up medical supplies for her father who had chronic health issues. I had helped her navigate a complicated order situation months earlier, and we had exchanged business cards. Jennifer listened to my explanation, asked me to email her the court documents immediately, and called me back within 2 hours. This is one of the more creative and frankly disturbing attempts at legal manipulation I've seen in my career, she said bluntly. But I need you to understand something important. It's not entirely without precedent. There have been cases, not many, but some, where parents have claimed implied contracts with adult children. Most get dismissed fairly quickly, but not all of them. My stomach dropped sickeningly. So they could actually win. They could actually take my house? It's statistically unlikely, but I've practiced family law long enough to never say never. Do you have documentation of your earnings and savings? Bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns? Everything, I said. I've kept every piece of financial documentation since I opened my first checking account at 16. I'm obsessively organized about that stuff. Excellent. That's going to be absolutely crucial. Start putting together a comprehensive timeline. Every job you've worked, every dollar you've earned and saved, every financial milestone. We need to demonstrate beyond any possible doubt that you purchased this house entirely with your own funds and labor, with zero parental contribution. I spent the next 3 weeks building my case with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that had made me successful in logistics coordination. Every evening after work, I sat at my kitchen table, in my house, with file folders and documents spread across the entire surface, documenting 7 years of complete financial independence. Bank statements from my first checking account, opened when I was 16 with $200 earned from a month of working at a Starbucks near my high school. Pay stubs from the grocery store where I had worked weekends and summers, earning $9 per hour to stock shelves and run cash registers. Tax returns showing steady employment since I was legally allowed to file, demonstrating a clear pattern of earned income with no parental contributions or gifts. I created spreadsheets tracking every dollar I had earned and every dollar I had saved. I documented my rent payments for 5 years at the studio apartment, $2,200 monthly that I had paid entirely myself, never once asking my parents for assistance. I pulled credit card statements showing the modest purchases I had made over the years, the careful budgeting, the absence of frivolous spending. Jennifer reviewed everything with methodical precision during our meetings. She was in her late 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an even sharper understanding of family law dynamics. Her office was located in a modest building in the University District, decorated with photographs of her 2 young daughters and framed certificates from landmark cases she had won. "Your documentation is absolutely excellent," she said during our 4th meeting, spreading my organized files across her conference table. "But I need you to understand something crucial about family court, Maya. Judges in these cases have extremely wide discretion. They can consider factors that go well beyond strict legal precedent. The emotional angle your parents are playing, the wounded parents, the ungrateful daughter, the struggling younger son, that narrative could potentially resonate with a judge who has strong beliefs about family obligations, superseding individual achievement." I gripped the arms of the chair, my knuckles white. "So even though I earned every single cent, I might actually lose my house because I'm supposed to sacrifice for my brother who's never sacrificed anything in his life?" "Not lose it entirely," Jennifer clarified. "But you could potentially be forced to share ownership or provide significant financial compensation. It depends entirely on how the judge interprets the concept of implied family contracts and filial obligations." She leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. "Tell me about your relationship with your parents. Not just recent history, everything. Start from the beginning." I talked for over an hour, maybe longer. I described working 2 jobs simultaneously through high school, while Dylan received a generous weekly allowance of $80 for doing minimal chores. I explained how my parents had paid Dylan's full university tuition, approximately $32,000 annually for 4 years at University of Oregon, plus room and board, while telling me to take out student loans for my community college and state university education. I detailed every birthday where Dylan received expensive gifts, gaming systems, laptops, concert tickets, clothing from Nordstrom, while I received $50 gift cards to Target or Amazon. I outlined the pattern of enabling and lowered expectations that had defined my family dynamics for as long as I could consciously remember. Told her about the time I was 19, and my Honda broke down completely, leaving me stranded. I had asked my parents if they could loan me $1,500 for repairs, promising to pay them back within 3 months. My father had said, "This is a good opportunity for you to learn about financial planning and emergency funds." Meanwhile, 6 months later, they bought Dylan a brand new car when his vehicle got a minor dent in a parking lot. Jennifer took extensive notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finally finished, emotionally exhausted, she set down her pen and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Here's what I see. Maya, your parents practiced systematic differential treatment throughout your entire childhood and adolescence. They consistently provided substantially more financial support to your brother, while maintaining unrealistic expectations of self-sufficiency from you. Now they're attempting to retroactively claim you owe them for basic parenting expenses, while completely ignoring the massive disparity in how they treated their 2 children. It's manipulative, it's morally wrong, and frankly, it makes me angry. But can we win? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We can present an extremely compelling case. Whether the judge rules in your favor depends on factors I cannot control. The judge's personal beliefs about family, their interpretation of implied contracts, their response to emotional manipulation. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. We need witness testimony. Anyone who can speak credibly to your work history, your financial independence, your parents' pattern of differential treatment. Who can we call? I thought carefully. Margaret, obviously. My coworker and friend who's known me for 6 years. Dennis Murray, my former manager from the grocery store where I worked in college. He wrote me a recommendation letter for scholarships. Professor Linda Hayward from UW, who helped me navigate financial aid and saw how hard I was working. Helen Richardson, my current supervisor at the distribution center. She's tough but fair and she respects my work ethic. Good. Anyone else? Any family members who might be willing to testify honestly? I hesitated. Maybe my cousin Ashley? She's my mom's niece, lives in Tacoma. We've talked a few times about family dynamics, and she's hinted that she sees the favoritism, but I don't know if she'd be willing to testify against my parents. I'll reach out to her carefully, Jennifer said. Also, Maya, we need to consider your brother. Will he testify for your parents? Absolutely. Without question. Then we need to be prepared for whatever narrative he constructs. Think about the story they'll tell the court. Poor Dylan, struggling creative soul trying to find his path, while his cold, selfish sister hoards resources and refuses to help family in need. They'll paint you as privileged and ungrateful. I laughed bitterly. Privileged. Because I worked 80-hour weeks and lived on pasta and canned soup for years. Perception matters enormously in court, Maya. We need to control the narrative very carefully. Jennifer made more notes. I want you to document every instance you can remember of your parents supporting Dylan financially over the past 7 years. Every car payment they made, every credit card they paid off, every rent check they covered, every cash gift. Can you do that? Dylan posts literally everything on social media. New shoes, weekend trips, expensive dinners, concert tickets. I can probably piece together a fairly comprehensive timeline of his spending and their support. Do it. Create a detailed spreadsheet. And Maya? Jennifer's expression softened slightly. Prepare yourself emotionally. Family court can get extremely ugly. Your parents and brother are going to say things specifically designed to hurt you. They'll testify about what a difficult, ungrateful child you were. Your brother will paint himself as a victim of your success. You need to be mentally ready for that level of emotional manipulation. I nodded, but my hands were shaking when I left her office that evening. That night, I sat in my living room with my laptop and systematically went through Dylan's social media accounts. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. 7 years of posts documenting a lifestyle I could never have afforded, and never would have chosen even if I could afford it. Designer sneakers, Jordan retros, limited edition Yeezys. Weekend trips to Portland, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Vancouver. Expensive brunches at trendy restaurants in Bellevue and Seattle. $20 avocado toast, artisanal coffee drinks, craft cocktails. Concert tickets to see major artists at Climate Pledge Arena. New clothes for every season from Nordstrom, All Saints, Urban Outfitters. A new MacBook Pro, an iPad, AirPods Max, a vintage record player, vinyl records that cost $30 to $40 each. And interspersed between all the materialism were captions about struggle, about the difficulty of finding yourself, about how hard life was when your family didn't understand your artistic vision and creative process. The cognitive dissonance was absolutely staggering. I created a detailed spreadsheet, dates, items, estimated costs based on retail prices and Dylan's own tags and geolocation data. By the time I finished at 2 a.m, I had documented approximately $78,000 in parental support Dylan had received over 7 years. Meanwhile, my parents had given me exactly nothing during that same period. Not for birthdays, just those Target gift cards. Not for Christmas. Not for emergencies when my car needed repairs or when I had unexpected medical bills. Nothing. The court date approached with inexorable momentum. I took the day off work, dressing in the most professional outfit I owned. Black slacks from an outlet store, a navy blazer I had bought on clearance, and simple black flats. I looked at myself in the mirror that morning and barely recognized the anxious woman staring back at me. Jennifer met me outside the King County Courthouse at 8:45. The building was imposing, all glass and concrete and the weight of the legal system. "Remember," she said as we went through security, "stay calm no matter what they say. Answer questions directly and honestly. Don't let them bait you into emotional responses or defensive anger. The facts are overwhelmingly on your side." The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined from watching legal dramas on television, with wood-paneled walls and fluorescent lighting that gave everything a slightly harsh institutional cast. My parents sat on one side with their attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit named Robert Caldwell, who looked like he specialized in making people feel small. Dylan sat directly behind them, wearing a button-down shirt and slacks, probably the most professional outfit he owned. He was clearly trying to project an image of struggling young man trying to better himself. When they saw me enter, my mother's face tightened into a hard mask. My father looked away deliberately. Dylan stared at me with undisguised hostility and something that looked disturbingly like triumph. The judge was a woman in her early 60s named Judge Patricia Morrison. She had gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and an expression of professional neutrality as she reviewed the case documents while we waited in tense silence. Finally, she looked up. "This is a petition for financial compensation or property rights based on parental investment and child rearing expenses. The plaintiffs claim an implied contract existed. Let's proceed with opening statements. Mr. Caldwell, you may begin." My parents' attorney stood, and his presentation was smooth, practiced, clearly designed to tug at heartstrings and evoke sympathy. He talked eloquently about sacrifice and duty, about parents who had devoted 25 years to raising 2 children, about reasonable expectations of gratitude and familial reciprocity in times of need. He painted my parents as wounded and betrayed, generous people who had given everything to their daughter, only to have that generosity thrown back in their faces by an ungrateful child who refused to help her struggling younger brother in his time of need. "The Fosters simply ask," Caldwell concluded, his voice taking on a tone of wounded reasonableness, "that their daughter recognize the investment they made in her life and show basic family loyalty by helping her brother achieve the same stability she has been fortunate enough to attain." Is that truly too much to ask? Then Jennifer stood. Her opening statement was factual, precise, and devastating in its clarity. She outlined my complete work history from age 16 onward. She detailed my financial independence. She presented the documented disparity in parental support between Dylan and me, $78,000 versus $500 over 7 years. She presented it not as a sob story or an emotional appeal, but as an irrefutable timeline of facts that spoke for themselves. The plaintiffs cannot claim they made equal investments in both children when the financial evidence proves otherwise, Jennifer concluded. This is not a case about family obligation. This is a case about one adult child who succeeded through extraordinary personal effort being punished for that success by parents who now want to transfer those rewards to another adult child who has consistently failed to demonstrate any financial responsibility. The testimony began with my father. He sat in the witness box looking dignified and appropriately wounded, the perfect image of a disappointed parent who had tried his best only to be rejected. Robert Caldwell led him through a series of questions clearly designed to establish the narrative of loving, devoted parents who had provided equally for both children according to their different needs. "Mr. Foster, did you treat both your children equally?" Caldwell asked. "We treated them according to their individual needs and personalities," my father replied, his voice steady. "Maya was always extremely independent from a young age. Very self-sufficient. She didn't require as much guidance or support. Dylan, on the other hand, is more creative, more sensitive. He required more parental involvement and support as he tried to find his path in life. And when Maya purchased a house, what was your initial reaction? We were proud of her accomplishments, certainly, but we also hoped she would recognize her good fortune and be willing to help her younger brother, who hasn't had the same advantages Maya has had. We thought she might offer to let Dylan stay with her while he establishes his graphic design business, perhaps pay minimal rent. It seemed like a natural family solution. Jennifer stood for cross-examination, and I could see the shift in her demeanor, from professional courtesy to surgical precision. Mr. Foster, you stated that Maya didn't require as much guidance or support. Did she also not receive as much financial support? My father shifted slightly in his seat. We supported both our children appropriately for their circumstances. Did you pay for Maya's college education? She chose to attend community college initially, then transferred to a state university. We offered to help with private university costs if she had applied to schools like her brother. But did you pay for Maya's actual college education, the schools she did attend? No, she took out student loans. But you did pay for Dylan's university education, full tuition, room, board, and a monthly allowance at University of Oregon. Is that correct? Yes, Dylan attended a 4-year institution. For a total of how many years? My father's jaw tightened visibly. He had to restart twice, so approximately 6 years total. And each time he withdrew from school, did you receive any refund on the tuition you had paid? No, but that's not relevant to... I would argue it's extremely relevant to the question of equal treatment. Mr. Foster, how much did you spend on Dylan's attempted college education over those 6 years? I don't have exact figures readily available. Jennifer pulled out a document, walking toward the witness stand. According to university records and your own financial statements provided during discovery, approximately $135,000. Does that sound accurate? Approximately, yes. And how much did you contribute to Maya's community college and university education? The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, my father said quietly, Maya was financially independent. She preferred to handle it herself. She preferred it. Or you told her to take out loans because you had decided to invest your resources primarily in Dylan? We encouraged Maya to be self-sufficient. Did you purchase Dylan a car when he turned 21? We gave him a vehicle, yes. A Subaru Outback. A brand new Subaru Outback valued at approximately $32,000. It was important that he have reliable transportation. And what vehicle did you purchase for Maya? My father didn't answer immediately. Jennifer let the silence hang heavy in the courtroom. Mr. Foster, what vehicle did you purchase for your daughter Maya? Maya purchased her own vehicle. Because you told her to save up and buy one herself, correct? We felt it would be good for her to have that accomplishment. Over the past 7 years, have you paid any of Dylan's credit card bills? We've helped him through some difficult financial periods, yes. How much approximately? I don't keep detailed records of every dollar spent on my children. Jennifer produced another document. Your bank records show direct transfers and checks totaling approximately $43,000 to Dylan over 7 years. Does that sound accurate? My father's face had gone red. We help our children when they genuinely need assistance. How much have you transferred to Maya during that same 7-year period? Maya has a stable, well-paying job. She hasn't needed financial assistance. So to summarize clearly for the court, you spent $135,000 on Dylan's incomplete education. You transferred approximately $43,000 to cover his debts and living expenses. You purchased him a $32,000 vehicle. That's $210,000. Meanwhile, you contributed $0 to Maya's education, $0 to her living expenses, purchased her no vehicle, and provided approximately $500 total in gift cards. And now you're suing Maya for compensation based on your investment in raising her. Is that an accurate summary of the situation? You're deliberately twisting the facts to make us look. I'm stating the documented facts, Mr. Foster. No further questions. My mother testified next, and her presentation was far more emotional. She cried when describing how I had turned my back on family when they needed me most. She talked about the pain of watching siblings divided, of seeing a child become cold and distant. Robert Caldwell handed her tissues and guided her through testimony about all the ways they had supported me throughout childhood. Birthday parties, Christmas presents, family vacations, a comfortable home. Jennifer's cross-examination was equally precise and devastating. Mrs. Foster, did you ever offer to contribute to Maya's house down payment? My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. We assumed she had it covered. Maya has always been so capable, so self-sufficient. Did you offer to contribute to Dylan's living expenses during this same time period? Dylan needed help. He was struggling. Why does struggling entitle someone to more support than someone who works hard specifically to avoid struggling? That's not how family works, my mother said, fresh tears streaming down her face. You help the people who need help. And when Maya was struggling, working 2 jobs simultaneously, eating inexpensive food to save money, driving an unreliable 15-year-old car, where was the family help then? My mother had no answer. The tears continued, but I found myself feeling nothing except cold clarity that I was watching a calculated performance designed to manipulate sympathy rather than genuine emotion. Then Dylan took the stand. He wore his victimhood like protective armor, describing how difficult his life had been, how he had always struggled in my shadow, how our parents had been harder on him because I had set such an impossibly high standard of achievement. Maya made it very clear she thought she was better than me, Dylan said, his voice taking on an injured tone. She constantly judged my choices, looked down on me for needing help from our parents. When she bought that house, I honestly thought maybe she'd finally be willing to support family, to help me get stable. But instead, she threw her success in my face and refused to help. What did you expect would happen when Maya bought the house? Caldwell asked gently. I thought maybe she'd let me stay there temporarily while I built my graphic design portfolio and found steady clients, just for a year or so, paying modest rent until I got established. But she refused immediately. She said cruel things about how I'd never held a job for more than 8 months, about how I was irresponsible. She humiliated me in front of our parents. Jennifer's cross-examination was brutal in its simplicity. Mr. Foster, how many jobs have you held for more than 1 year consecutively? Dylan hesitated, clearly not expecting such a direct question. I've had several positions over the years. Please answer the specific question. How many jobs have you held for more than 12 consecutive months? I don't know exactly. A few, maybe. According to your own resume and LinkedIn profile provided, during Discovery, you've had 11 jobs in 7 years. The longest tenure was 8 months at a coffee shop. Is that correct? Dylan's face flushed dark red. Some jobs weren't the right fit for my skills and creative needs. How much do you currently pay monthly in rent? I'm staying with my parents right now. For how long? About 11 months. And before that? I had an apartment in Seattle for about 5 months before being evicted for non-payment of rent, which my parents then paid off. How much did they pay to resolve that eviction? Around $4,000, I think. Have you ever paid your own rent consistently for more than 12 months? It's expensive to live in Seattle. It's hard for creative professionals. Maya manages to pay her rent and now her mortgage while working in logistics. Not exactly a high-paying creative field. What's the difference? She's willing to sacrifice everything for money, Dylan snapped, his composure finally cracking. She has no life, no joy, no friends. She just works and saves obsessively and judges everyone else who doesn't live like a robot. Did you ask Maya directly if you could live in her house? My parents suggested it would be a good family arrangement. Did you offer to pay market rate rent for the Seattle area? They suggested $400 a month. That's what I could afford. The mortgage on Maya's house is $2,200 monthly, plus approximately $800 in utilities, insurance, and property taxes. That's $3,000 total. You were offering to pay 13% of the monthly costs while presumably occupying 25% of the space. Did you consider that a fair arrangement? I'm her brother. Family is supposed to help family. Did you help Maya when she was working 2 jobs and eating inexpensive food to save money? I was in school. Maya was also in school while working 2 jobs. Did you offer to help her study, contribute to her expenses, support her in any way? Dylan's eyes filled with tears, a trick he had perfected over the years. I was dealing with my own mental health challenges and trying to find my path. No further questions, Your Honor. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand feeling like I was moving through water, everything slow and surreal and slightly disconnected from reality. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Jennifer led me through my testimony carefully, methodically establishing my complete work history and financial independence. Maya, did your parents ever offer to help with your college tuition? No. When I asked about it before starting at community college, my father told me to take out student loans if I needed them, that it would teach me financial responsibility. Did they offer to help purchase a car? No. When mine broke down when I was 19, I asked if they could loan me $1,500 for repairs. My father said it was a good learning opportunity about emergency funds. I ended up taking a personal loan from my credit union at 18% interest. Did they offer to help with your house down payment? No. They didn't even know I was seriously house hunting until after I had made an offer and it was accepted. How much money have you received from your parents since turning 18? I had prepared for this question. Approximately $500 total over 12 years. $100 for my 21st birthday. $100 for my 25th birthday. The rest in Target or Amazon gift cards for Christmas, usually $25 or $50. And during that same 12-year period, how much did they give Dylan? Based on social media posts, bank transfers they've mentioned, and direct statements they've made to family members, I estimate approximately $210,000. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Morrison looked up from her notes with raised eyebrows. That's a very substantial difference, Jennifer said, letting it sink in. Did you ever question why you were treated so differently? Constantly. Especially during high school and college when the disparity was most obvious and painful. I was told repeatedly that Dylan needed more help and that I was capable of taking care of myself. How did that make you feel? Like my hard work was being punished. Like struggling and failing was rewarded, while succeeding independently was taken for granted. Like I didn't matter as much. Robert Caldwell stood for cross-examination. His strategy was clearly to paint me as bitter, scorekeeping, and unwilling, to understand that families have different needs at different times. Ms. Foster, do you love your brother? The question caught me off guard, but I answered honestly. I don't know anymore. I love the idea of having a brother. But the person Dylan has become, someone who expects everyone else to fund his lifestyle, while contributing nothing, who views my hard work as something I'm doing to spite him rather than for my own future. I don't know if I love that person. That's extremely harsh. It's extremely honest. Your parents provided for you for 18 years, gave you a comfortable middle-class childhood. Don't you think you owe them something for that? They fulfilled their legal obligation as parents. Children don't owe their parents reimbursement for the choice to have children. Even after everything they sacrificed for you? What did they sacrifice specifically? Please be detailed, because from my perspective, they sacrificed for Dylan while telling me to sacrifice for myself. Caldwell tried several more angles, suggesting I was materialistic, that I valued property over people, that I lacked compassion for those less fortunate. But I refused to be baited into emotional responses. I stuck to facts, to documented timelines, to the irrefutable disparity in treatment. When I finally stepped down from the witness stand, I felt emotionally drained but clear-headed. I had told my truth. Jennifer called Margaret as a character witness. Margaret testified about working alongside me for 6 years, about my dedication and reliability, about the countless times I had mentioned my goal of buying a house and the sacrifices I made to achieve it. "Did Maya ever mention her parents helping her financially?" Jennifer asked. "Never. Not once. She talked about her parents sometimes, but always in the context of what they were doing for her brother. I got the distinct impression she had given up expecting anything from them years ago." Dennis Murray, my former grocery store manager, testified about employing me from age 18 to 23. He described a young woman who never called in sick, who took every available shift, who saved her paychecks with focused determination. "I offered to promote Maya to assistant manager when she was 20, he said. She turned it down because the evening management hours would have conflicted with her community college classes. That's the kind of person Maya is. She thinks long-term, makes hard choices, doesn't take shortcuts." Professor Linda Hayward from University of Washington testified about my time as her student. "Maya was one of the hardest working students I've taught in 23 years of teaching. She worked full-time while taking a full course load. She never asked for special treatment, never made excuses. She earned every single grade she received through pure effort." Helen Richardson, my current supervisor, testified about my performance at the distribution center. "She wasn't effusive. That wasn't her style. But her clinical assessment of my capabilities carried significant weight. Maya is the person I call when something critical needs to be handled correctly," Helen said. "She doesn't make excuses. She doesn't blame others. She solves problems efficiently. That's genuinely rare." The testimonies painted a clear picture. A woman who had worked relentlessly for 7 years, saved aggressively while living modestly, and achieved her goal through pure determination and discipline. On the other side, the picture was equally clear. Parents who had enabled one child while demanding independence from the other, now attempting to retroactively claim compensation for basic parenting duties while ignoring the massive disparity in their treatment. Judge Morrison called for closing statements. Robert Caldwell made an emotional appeal about family obligations, about the reasonable expectations parents should have after decades of sacrifice, about the importance of helping family members in need. "The foster parents are not asking for payment," he concluded. "They're asking for compassion, for recognition of their investment, for a daughter to help her struggling brother the way families should help each other. Is that truly unreasonable?" Jennifer's closing statement was devastating in its factual precision. The plaintiffs claim an implied contract, she began. But there was no contract, implied or otherwise. There was only a pattern of systematic differential treatment where one child was given every advantage while the other was told to fend for herself. Maya did fend for herself. She succeeded through extraordinary hard work and sacrifice. Now her parents want to punish that success by forcing her to subsidize her brother's continued dependence and financial irresponsibility. The evidence shows the plaintiffs provided $210,000 to Dylan over 7 years while providing $500 to Maya. They cannot claim equal investment when the financial records prove otherwise. They cannot claim Maya owes them compensation when they chose to invest their resources almost exclusively in her brother. This court should not reward this manipulation. This court should not send the message that working hard and succeeding makes you liable for supporting family members who refuse to do the same. Judge Morrison took a 30-minute recess to review the case documents in her chambers. We sat in the courtroom in tense silence. I counted the ceiling tiles, 48 across, 32 down, trying not to think about the possibility of losing the house I had worked 7 years to buy. When Judge Morrison returned, her expression was professionally neutral, but something in her eyes suggested she had made her decision. "I've reviewed the testimonies, documents, and evidence presented," she began. "This case presents questions about family obligations, implied contracts, and the extent to which adult children owe their parents compensation for child-rearing expenses." My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, in my temples, behind my eyes. However, after careful consideration of all evidence, I find no legal basis whatsoever for the plaintiff's claims. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Judge Morrison continued, her voice steady and authoritative in the now quiet courtroom. The plaintiffs argue they provided substantial support during the defendant's childhood and therefore deserve compensation or property rights. However, providing basic necessities for a minor child is a fundamental legal obligation, not a contract that creates future debt or obligation. Moreover, the evidence presented demonstrates an extremely clear pattern of differential treatment between the two adult children. The plaintiffs provided approximately $210,000 in support to their son Dylan after he reached adulthood, while providing approximately $500 to their daughter Maya during the same 12-year period. The plaintiffs cannot claim they made equal investments in both children when the financial evidence overwhelmingly proves otherwise. My father's attorney stood. Your Honor, if I may, the investment in childhood years? Counsel. I've heard your arguments thoroughly. The childhood years are not at issue here. What is at issue is whether the defendant owes her parents compensation or property rights based on that childhood. The law is unambiguous. She does not. Parents choose to have children. Children do not choose to be born. The duty flows in one direction only. Judge Morrison looked directly at my parents, and her expression hardened slightly. What troubles me most significantly about this case is the apparent motivation. The evidence shows the defendant worked 2 jobs from age 16. She put herself through college while working full-time. She saved aggressively and sacrificed considerably to purchase her home with 0 parental financial contribution. Rather than celebrating this remarkable achievement, the plaintiffs filed suit within 2 weeks of the purchase, seeking to transfer the benefit of that achievement to their son, who has received substantially more parental support and demonstrated substantially less financial responsibility. The evidence conclusively shows the defendant purchased her home entirely with funds she earned and saved independently. There is no legal basis for the plaintiff's claim of implied contract or owed compensation. Furthermore, I find the timing and motivation of this lawsuit to be deeply concerning. It appears designed not to recover genuine losses, but to manipulate the defendant into supporting her adult brother indefinitely. Judge Morrison picked up her gavel. The case is dismissed with prejudice. The defendant owes nothing to the plaintiffs. Additionally, I am awarding attorney's fees and court costs to the defendant. The plaintiffs will reimburse her legal expenses within 60 days. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through my entire body. I sat frozen, my brain struggling to process what had just happened. Jennifer touched my arm gently. We won, Maya. It's over. You won. My parents' attorney was already gathering his papers, his expression professionally neutral but his movements tight with barely suppressed frustration. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscles working. My mother continued crying, but now she was looking at me with something that might have been shock or rage or disbelief. I couldn't tell which and didn't particularly care. Dylan stood abruptly and walked out of the courtroom without looking at anyone, his footsteps echoing sharply against the tile floor. My parents approached with their attorney trailing behind, and for a brief moment, I thought they might apologize, might acknowledge what they had tried to do, might show some recognition of how they had attempted to steal the one thing I had worked my entire adult life to achieve. Instead, my father said coldly, "You've destroyed this family." Maya. The words were so absurd I almost laughed. I destroyed the family? You sued me for buying a house with my own money. You refused to help your brother, my mother said, wiping tears. You chose property over family. I chose myself, I corrected, my voice steady. For the first time in my life, I prioritized my own needs and goals. And you couldn't tolerate it. We raised you better than this, my father said. You raised me to be independent and self-sufficient. That's exactly what I am. You just didn't like it when I succeeded without needing you, without giving you leverage to manipulate me. Jennifer stepped forward. This conversation is over. Please direct any further communication through my office. My parents left without another word, and I stood in the empty courtroom, listening to the silence and feeling the weight of 7 years of work validated. Protected, preserved. Over the following months, life settled into a new normal. Work continued with its usual rhythms. I had dinner with Margaret regularly, and she helped me plant a vegetable garden in my backyard. I adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever mix named Copper, who loved the yard and slept at the foot of my bed. I received a promotion at work, a 12% salary increase that let me start saving for the kitchen renovation I wanted. I took my first real vacation in 6 years, a week in Portland with Margaret, exploring bookstores and coffee shops and hiking in the Columbia River Gorge. My parents never apologized. They never acknowledged what they had done or attempted to make amends. Within 8 months, I heard through my cousin Ashley that they had alienated most of the extended family with their victim narrative and manipulative behavior. They stopped attending family gatherings after my uncle confronted them directly about their pattern of behavior. Dylan moved in with a girlfriend who lasted 6 months before realizing he expected her to fund his entire lifestyle. After she left, he moved back in with my parents, where he remained, still searching for someone to support him while contributing nothing. The three of them created their own isolated bubble, convinced the world was against them, never acknowledging that their troubles were entirely self-created. One evening, almost a year after the trial, I stood on my back deck with Copper at my feet, watching the sunset paint the Seattle sky in shades of orange and pink. My house stood solid behind me, no longer threatened by lawsuits or family manipulation. I had paid down the mortgage slightly ahead of schedule. The kitchen renovation was planned for the following spring: new countertops, updated appliances, fresh paint. I thought about the girl I had been at 16, working her first job at Starbucks and dreaming of independence, of owning something that couldn't be taken away, of building a life on her own terms. She would be proud of where I had ended up. Not just the house or the job or the financial stability, but the strength to stand up to people who tried to take what I had earned. 2 years later, the lawsuit had changed me in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Not just in my relationship with my family, that bridge had been thoroughly burned, but in how I viewed myself and my accomplishments. For years, I had internalized my parents' narrative that my independence was somehow cold, that my self-sufficiency was selfishness, that my success was just luck or privilege. The trial had forced me to see the truth clearly. I had earned everything I had through genuine hard work, and there was no shame in protecting what I had built. My career continued to advance. At 32, I was promoted to operations manager, overseeing a team of 12 people and managing logistics for the entire Pacific Northwest region. The salary increase, $95,000 annually, felt surreal. I still found myself mentally converting prices at the grocery store, calculating whether something was worth the cost, before remembering that I could afford it now. Margaret threw a small dinner party at my house to celebrate the promotion. 6 people total: Margaret and Rachel, Helen and her husband, and 2 other colleagues from work. We grilled salmon on my deck, drank wine, and laughed late into the evening. As I looked around at the people gathered in my home that I had fought for and protected, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: genuine contentment. The house itself had become more than just an achievement or a symbol of independence. It had become a real home. I had painted every room, replaced the outdated light fixtures, and slowly updated the landscaping. The kitchen renovation had been completed that spring: quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, and a beautiful tile backsplash that made me smile every morning when I made coffee. I had hung artwork on the walls, pieces I had bought from local artists at Pike Place Market, not expensive but meaningful. I had learned to cook complicated meals, experimenting with recipes and hosting small dinner parties. The guest bedroom had been converted into a proper home office. With built-in shelving, I had installed myself with the help of YouTube tutorials. The silence from my parents and Dylan continued, absolute and unbroken. Occasionally, I would hear updates through my cousin Ashley, who had become a genuine friend in the aftermath of the trial. "Your mom is telling people you're in therapy for your issues with family. Ashley told me over coffee one Saturday morning. She's created this whole narrative where you had some kind of breakdown and turned against them. I sipped my latte, unsurprised. Let her tell whatever story she needs to tell. Anyone who matters knows the truth. Dylan apparently started 3 different businesses in the past year, Ashley continued. A drop-shipping thing that lasted 2 months, a cryptocurrency investment scheme that lost them about $15,000, and now he's trying to be a social media influencer. He has like 300 followers. Is he still living with them? Oh yeah, rent-free, obviously. Your dad apparently suggested he get a regular job, and Dylan accused him of crushing his entrepreneurial spirit. Ashley shook her head. The irony is completely lost on all of them. They created this monster and now they're stuck with him. I felt a twinge of something. Not quite sympathy, but perhaps recognition of the sadness of the situation. My parents had spent decades enabling Dylan, and now they were trapped in a dynamic they had created, unable to change course without admitting they had been wrong. That fall, I received an unexpected email from Jennifer Chen, the attorney who had represented me. Maya, I wanted to reach out about something. I've had 3 potential clients contact me in the past year, all with similar situations to yours. Parents or family members filing lawsuits to claim ownership or compensation after an adult child purchases property. 2 of them found me because they researched your case online. Would you be willing to speak with any of them? Not as a witness or anything official, just as someone who's been through it? I agreed, and over the next several months I spoke with 2 women and 1 man who were facing variations of my situation. Each conversation was emotionally difficult but also strangely validating, confirmation that what I had experienced wasn't unique, that family financial manipulation was more common than people acknowledged. One woman, Sandra, was 35 and had bought a small condo in Spokane after working her way up from medical assistant to registered nurse. Her parents had filed suit claiming they deserved compensation because they had paid for her medical assistant training program, a 10-month certificate that cost $8,000, which she had offered to repay multiple times, but they had refused. Now they wanted $40,000. Another woman, Keisha, was 28 and had bought a townhouse in Tacoma. Her mother and stepfather were suing her, claiming they deserved partial ownership because they had allowed her to live, rent-free for 6 months when she was 22, conveniently, ignoring that during those 6 months, Keisha had paid all the household utilities, bought groceries, and provided childcare for her younger half-siblings. The man, James, was 41 and had purchased a small commercial property to start a consulting business. His parents were claiming he owed them compensation for his childhood expenses, arguing that they had invested in him with the expectation he would support them in retirement. All 3 cases were ultimately dismissed, but the emotional toll was significant. Sandra stopped speaking to her parents entirely. Keisha's relationship with her mother was permanently damaged. James developed anxiety and insomnia that required therapy to address. It's financial abuse disguised as family obligation, Jennifer said when we met for coffee to discuss these cases. And it's more common than people realize because most people settle out of court or give in to the demands rather than fight. You fought, Maya, and you won. That matters.